Hey everybody, this is Ben Marchman with NatureLink. I want to welcome you to the FireKeepers Global Conference, in which we will gather for powerful conversations with cutting-edge experts and thought leaders who will guide you to connect to your truest self and activate your natural gifts. This event is designed to reinstate the importance of carrying our soul-directed vision back into our communities so that ourselves and our communities will flourish. Here you're invited to learn how to seek the guidance of your inner voice so that you can truly understand what it means to live life with purpose. We have Ariana Candell on the call today. Ariana is a therapist who is passionate about helping people reconnect with their own bodies and the natural world as a path to a more holistic and balanced way of life. Excuse me. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist and a registered dance movement therapist. She has 20 plus years experience in the field and 10 years experience with pioneering and teaching somatic ecotherapy practices. Ariana is the founder of the Earth Body Institute, a professional, educational, and transformational forum dedicated to cultivating dynamic, reciprocal relationships with the natural world. She has developed and taught a variety of online and land-based ecotherapy training programs and hosted the first online ecotherapy conference in 2018. She also teaches ecotherapy seminars as an adjunct professor at John F. Kennedy University. Ariana is a settler living most of her life in the Cochino Oline lands, which is now called Oakland, California. She is very grateful to be practicing this work. Ariana's topic of the day is reconnecting your body and earth and community with somatic ecotherapy. So welcome, Ariana.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
And I understand you wanted to open up today in a specific exercise.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm really happy that you're joining us today. And because part of my work is body-oriented, somatic, and experiential, I thought we could start with a little bit of a settling experience in our bodies and in connection with nature. So if you are open to joining me in this, it'll be a minute or two. I invite you to close your eyes, and I will as well. And feel your breath coming into your lungs from the air where you are right now. And slowing that down just a little bit to begin to feel yourself in your body through breathing the air through your nose into your lungs. And then imagine you are breathing the air of the land around you, outside of wherever you're listening right now. So breathing that in, whether it's cool or warm or hot. Imagine the temperature of breathing that air. And then I want you to imagine your favorite place you have right now, whether it's a childhood place or a place around where you live or work or somewhere you've gone to visit. And call in that place in your imagination and your feelings. And imagine that you are actually breathing that air. So it might have a different scent to it. It might be of pine or moist leaves, of sea spray, or crisp of the mountaintop. So breathe in that air with whatever scents and whatever temperature you'd like it to be right now. And as you're breathing, just acknowledge the whatever plants and green and perhaps trees are around, helping you, give you that oxygen that you need for that air. Appreciating them and giving back your CO2 for them to transform back into oxygen again. And then also imagine that all of us who are listening right now and who are listening in the next bit of time that people will be listening to this, that we're all breathing the same air together. So all of it connects eventually across the planet. Just feel that camaraderie, that community of all of us sharing this connection through the air. And take a few moments to just notice if anything's changed inside of you. You may feel a little slower, you may feel a little calmer, you may feel many different things. So whatever you are aware of now, say hello to it, welcome it. And then we're going to imagine bringing yourself and possibly that favorite place that you have back into the conversation. So beginning to open your eyes and come back. Welcome back.
Thank you, Ariana. That was wonderful. And it definitely settled me back in after stumbled over my words a little bit in the introduction there. And losing my voice a little bit. So thank you for just helping us all settle in. That was really nice. And to me, that felt like a little bit of a bodily experience and not just me being in my head. So that was really wonderful.
Good. Yay, that's the point. You've got it already, Ben.
and as most of our listeners might know, and some of them might not, that a lot of the techniques and the other concepts that you use in your therapy practice are very somatic, but they also evoke a lot of kind of envisioning processes by using the natural world. And so the first question I wanted to ask was, what exactly is somatic ecotherapy, and what are some examples of it?
Great. Yeah, thanks. So first of all, I'm not sure if everyone has heard of the word ecotherapy, so I'm going to start there. It's been around for about 25 years, and it is the application of ecopsychology. So probably more people have heard of the term ecopsychology, which is the concepts of our human interrelationships with the natural world and mutual healing through that, not just us humans taking, but us humans in reciprocity and gratitude and giving back to the natural world, and kind of all the different thoughts that go with that on so many levels, so societal, political, emotional, spiritual, psychological, emotional. So anyway, so the field of ecotherapy is very vast. There's hundreds of studies, evidence-based studies on how nature does heal. Many of you probably know some of them. They're getting very popular in the news. And there's practitioners that work with horses and dogs, for animal-assisted therapy. There's horticulture therapy, lots of work in the prisons and with people who are ailing or in hospice. There is activism therapy. We'll talk about that later, but how that kind of can change your attitude towards what's happening to the world. And then there's nature connection work, which and sacred work of people in a deep communication with the land around them, and then there's my branch is kind of the therapeutic end. So how do I work with individual clients particularly and groups outdoors? How do we help them come into their bodies, come into relationship with the land, and actually work with whatever challenges they have, such if it's a relational challenge or a career challenge or a past history challenge, something from their childhood. So that's the kind of branch that I do, and then I bring in the body and movement and sensory awareness and such. So is that enough of a kind of a very quick what ecotherapy is? And
Yeah, and we'll dive a little bit more into that with some other questions. So if the listeners are still wondering.
Yeah, I'd actually like to say the somatic a little bit more, if that's okay. Yeah?
Yeah,
before you go
yeah.
on.
Some of us might not know what the word somatic means as well. So that'll be
Mm.
great.
Yeah, okay, so the word somatic has been around again for about 25 years, and it means a conscious awareness in the body. So it's not just doing something physical like working out, it's actually being present in the moment to, how do I feel right now in my heart, in my, in my, in the trunk of my body? What's percolating? What's tense? What's energetic? What messages am I getting from that? And kind of, maybe there's some images there. So somatic is, and there's lots of fields of healing around it, somatic experiencing, there's movement therapies and things. So somatic for our purposes here with ecotherapy is that when we go out into the natural world for healing, and that we include the body first, or pretty close to first, because it's going to be there anyway. But what's happening with our senses, like what are we smelling, what are we hearing, what are we maybe even tasting, what do we want to touch? So there's directing people to bring their awareness to their senses, because so many people live and are in their head and they're talking, and they really don't even notice what's happening outside, which is kind of sad, because there's so much beauty and so much to take in that's so nourishing. So one of the things I start with is the sensory, and then as we go on to the work, I'll give you some examples of, I live in the forest, or close to the forest, redwoods mostly, and some bays and some oaks. And so when I take people outdoors, they're often attracted to trees. They want to be near the trees. They want to sit against a tree. They want to touch the trees. They want to feel held and surrounded by the trees. So what often happens with whatever the issue is, it doesn't really matter what issue it is, they're going to want to engage with a tree. And so the somatic ways to do that is, first of all, seeing which tree or group of trees they're drawn to, and then asking verbally out loud or internally, is this okay? Would you like me to talk with you? Can we have some communication? And feeling that permission from whichever tree or group it is, so that it's not just, oh, here, I'm taking this tree and I'm going to touch it and it's going to help me. So there's actually a pause, okay, can we work together? And then, depending on what the issue is, we will, work with the tree. For example, many people, when I'm working with them outdoors, they want to lean against a tree and feel that support. So before we just lean against the tree and, sit back there, I invite them to kind of feel, what does it actually feel like against their back? What is it, how is it kind of helping them to root? Can they feel energetically a little more settling on the ground? Some people want to put the side or the back of their body against the tree, and to actually take a little time with that is the somatic part. But you want to give it enough time, a minute or 2, 3 minutes, whatever, to actually feel a shift happen. It's not just something against your back. It's actually this living being, this creature that is able to offer something, and people will feel more when we take time, often soften their eyes or close their eyes. So that's like a very common example that many people will do on their own and not tell you. And then, then when you invite, they're like, oh yeah, I do this, or, or I've heard of people doing this or whatever. But I encourage you, if you have that impulse, if you have any trees or favorite trees, to take a little time getting to know them, having some, not just physical communication, but begin to actually open up a dialogue of sharing, and to see what comes. There's many levels. So anyway, that's one big experience. And I would love to share another one like that happens with a lot of women. Is that okay to share another example?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay.
I loved your tree imagery and examples, by the way. That was wonderful.
Oh, great. Thank you. Yeah. So I work with a lot of women, and if you're a woman, you may have experiences at some point. If you're not, or you have whatever range of gender identities you identify with, this happens for a lot of people. So, but I'll speak for myself since I'm a woman. So, we grow up with not as much support for being powerful and saying what we believe in and speaking our mind and being strong and being visible. And so a lot of people come to me with wanting more of that and needing that and feeling, a little shyer, a little more small and all this. And so again, trees are fantastic models, right? They stand tall, they have their roots, they have their branches reaching out, and they're steady. They don't move except, maybe smaller ones or willows or stuff, but they are mostly pretty solid. And the branches can move and they can kind of respond to things and all that, but their core is solid. And so I'll invite again a woman to, or whoever it is, sorry, to see if there's a tree around them that kind of embodies what they're wanting. Again, do the protocol of permission and waiting for yes, and then go closer if they want, and then begin to actually feel in like their like with a friend, you're like, you feel like you're tuned up to each other. You're really resonating with each other. So to do that with the tree, and, to take their time, usually from the roots up through the trunk and then to the branches. And as they're doing this, different people will have different reactions. They might hit a bump of something sad that happened when they were a child, that someone criticized them or shamed them when they were big or were strong. And so, we'll feel that, we'll talk about that, we'll give permission to the child, we'll give some support to the child, we'll work with all that. And then usually something shifts a little, and then they, still feel that support of the tree, and then kind of like explore, what would it be if I made my energy bigger? What would it be if I was stronger? What would it be if I was taller? And, something will always shift. And it's not just, oh, I think I'm stronger, I'm more confident. It's like, oh, I can feel the difference in my body right now in this moment. And then we want to invite them to, obviously thank the tree when we're done, but also to cultivate that relationship, either come back to that tree or recall it in their imagination, or, do some kind of continuation with this. When they see the same species of tree, go, oh yeah, I remember that in me, so that they can kind of keep this new behavior, new feeling, new way of being going in their body. And it feels like, a supportive thing that they can count on. So that's another example that's common. So have you ever, I want to ask you, have you ever done anything like this with a tree, just to kind of get another voice in here?
Yes, I have, we do. I don't want the speakers to know too much about how Ariana know each other, but I've taken one of Ariana's courses. So not only doing that with Ariana, but also in our programs at NatureLink, we do a lot of deep nature connection practices similar to that, as well as the way you painted the picture of that was beautiful, but also it also makes me think about, we're sitting on fields as well, and then the trees have these magnetic fields as well, and so like feeling that in our body, and then of course feeling what the tree is transferring to us, and then most people would just stop there. And so what you're telling the listeners, which I think is so wonderful too, is and also just so profound for humans to understand, is like we have this experience, this bodily experience, and then we just kind of walk away from it. We don't like share it, or we. So I liked how you touched based on relationships, like continuing that relationship, because there's so much more there. You just had like a tiny little example. I mean, like, but in your world it's huge. But but what I'm kind of trying to get at is like extending that relationship with the tree and going deeper. And then what's so neat in the ecotherapy practice is then that can be related to like, okay, how are you sharing this with like humans and not just the trees? And which is, so you're taking those steps further. I think
nice. Yeah. It translates beyond that forest. Yeah. It translates into your whole life. Yeah.
And the somatic approach is just so, I was about to say profound, but it's so like, it's just so powerful and visceral. And, and plus like doing that for redwood can be very, and I would think would be very empowering. I'm in the Southeast, but I have been out west before and seen those trees. But, here, if we're doing that here, we have some beautiful oak trees. I mean, and they're
Mhm.
huge, but
Mhm.
there's just nothing as majestic as that redwood.
Just,
And so
just
that
different,
energy,
yeah.
that energy could be,
Mhm.
I would think would feel very like almost overwhelming. Um,
Mhm.
and and I kind of had a question that popped up
Yeah.
too.
Mhm. Depends how big it is, though. Some
Yeah,
of them are like, more manageable. The huge ones are a little bit intense.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to go down too far of a rabbit hole too, but have you gotten any feedback with clients and people that you worked with the species of trees and like what types of energies are they feeling or what's coming up for them?
That's a really good
I'm curious.
question. You know, I mean, people say a little bit of things like, there's the qualities of oaks. I mean, there's all different kinds of oaks, but some of the bigger, thicker ones that have been there a long time, that their branches are really big, you know, it's a different feeling than a very straight redwood tree with smaller branches. So, people describe their inner experience a little bit differently. But it's not like in another league or anything. It just, yeah, it depends. I mean, people are attracted to willows. I mean, the quality in the body is different, and the need in the body, the need in the being is different. So I mean, I would, if someone needs more flexibility in their life, more responsivity, less kind of rigidity and kind of, holding this, then a willow tree or some a tree with branches that really move a lot would be a great tree to cultivate a relationship with. But it's the essence of what they're experiencing is still about the same with some of the bigger sturdier trunked trees, which is what we usually do. But who knows?
Yeah,
So
this is kind
yeah.
of more of a curiosity.
I have one other thing to add, though, if you don't mind. So I, all the areas you all that are listening live in, are going to have different specialties that they have, and so any of these kind of practices can work with big boulders. It's got a similar quality, or mountain, and I guess I want to bring it broader to what I just described. I call it embodying nature, is kind of the way that I describe some of these practices. And so, you can embody a beautiful little petaled flower, or a fern, or the wind, or the sky, or sunset. There's so many things that you can invite yourself and others into, that have very different qualities than trees. So I want to make a lot of room and support for whatever parts of nature, including animals, are feeling important to have a relationship with, and to develop more parts of yourself through learning and being, and some people call it apprenticing with these parts. So, and I have one more important thing to say, is that I feel like there's a lot of talking, but it's exciting. So, another thing that a favorite thing that I do with groups that's somatically oriented, it's more of the sensory realm. I call it a sense walk, and I'm sure that many of you have done things similar to it. But the trick is that we do it in dyads, and partner with one other person, and one has their eyes closed and one of their eyes open. And we set it up so it's really safe and comfortable, and the person feels like they are trusting the other person and all that. But what happens with groups when they do this, we usually do 6 or 7 minutes of eyes closed, is they come out of it with their eyes are like open, and their hearts are open, and they look like little kids that just discovered a new world. This is if we do it with adults. And it's something that consistently is loved, and it's very visceral, because when we close our eyes, you know this, that's the other senses get a lot bigger. So anyway, I just want to name that. That's a wonderful thing to do with couples, with individuals. I've done it with families and little kids, and it's a good something towards the beginning of something, not way at the beginning, because people will be scared to close their eyes, but something towards the beginning hour or two. It's a fun thing to do. All right, that's all.
Yeah. No, you're good. And I'm glad you added that in. I was actually working with a group of kids last week, and we did actually a sense walk, which is sensory awareness walk. And it's something about when you're working with kids, and you're adult working with kids and doing this, it's kind of expecting that they're going to have like a great experience, because they're just so energetic, and it can be new to them, but also they just find out so much, and they're so sensory. But it's something about when an adult embraces that childlike mind and has almost like the same experience.
Mm-hmm.
And just to give you an example, we were doing this, and there's a father-daughter combo. And something about the dad being more excited than the daughter just really made me really excited, because it's like, oh, that's cool. Like, here's an arrogant man who thinks he knows everything, and all his daughters. Yeah, so like, I'm glad you added that in. That's a good story too. And like you're right with this. There's so much more in these trees, and like, the rocks offering a totally different type of embodiment than water and wind, and that can be a whole other conversation.
Yes, it's much more than this little blip.
Yeah, but you touched a little bit on embodied connection, and that was actually one of the questions I had for you today too, about when we're practicing embodied connection. You talk about how that evokes, or how like a vision kind of stirs in your body, like, or could be like reawakened. And so the question was like, how can practicing embodied connection to the natural world evoke a sacred vision?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's so many ways. I'll name a couple. One of the ways I practice is called authentic movement. It's a movement form that's been around since the 50s. It's kind of in the dance movement therapy realm. And essentially it is a witness with their eyes open, watching, and someone with their eyes closed, a mover moving. And this can be done with outdoors or indoors. I like to do it outdoors because there's so many more things that are witnessing and watching, and so many more things that kind of feed into your process. So what I do with my groups is we start with choosing something in the natural world that they want to witness and then be witnessed by. And then we do a 3-minute eyes open, first them witnessing and just seeing whatever is going on with the let's say, the fern. And as they're watching, they're noticing any feelings that come up. They're noticing any images, they're noticing any body sensations that come up. And so they're not just looking, they're feeling and opening also to the sacred, anything that comes up in there. And then they switch, and then they close their eyes, and then they experience the fern or boulder or whatever, witnessing them. And they do some kind of movement that is from the inside out. And so when people close their eyes and feel safe and feel well held and witnessed, things will come through that are surprising and really powerful. So that's kind of the beginning piece. And then we do it with humans. So you have a partner that you witness and that witnesses you, and you take turns. And when we do this, and again, we probably do it for 7 to 10 minutes at the very most, people just, what's there at the very subconscious level comes out in their body, and they may, turn into an animal. They may have this sense of the sacred, coming through them in light. They may have a vision of kind of what's a next step in their life that they hadn't thought of. So kind of opening up the body realm and the sacred realm, and going with what is evolving is very potent. And people are scared at first when they do it. And I recommend you to do it many times on your own before you do this. We ask other people to do it. But there's so much coming through our subconscious that can come out into the light if we allow it and allow it movement. So anyway, that's kind of one of the powerful ways that I love. And then, this is a whole form that you can, keep doing the movement, eyes closed and witnessing and moving for hours, depending on what's going on. And you journal and you draw and you share and all that. So that's one thing that I love. And then also sending people off on what I call a medicine walk or vision walk. You probably have done these too. But I'll tell you that the quick score of it is, you're starting with some kind of intention, which could be like, I want to learn more about what's my next step in my profession, or my next step in my relationship, or my next step on my path. my sacred path. And then you cross over a threshold, which marks kind of your opening. I'm ready. Okay, I'm ready. Land, sky, waters, for you to speak to me. And then you have 15 minutes, half an hour or more, and you're open, kind of like what I just described with the inner letting things unfold, but you're open to what the land presents to you, what you're drawn to, what speaks to you, what shows up. And people get a lot of really good messages from that. And so that is a favorite. And then they obviously have to come back over the threshold, and then they journal and share with the community what's going on. So those two are two favorites. And then, we work with whatever has come. Maybe we do some movement, maybe we do some drawing, maybe we do some, just the community witnessing and sharing is a lot. So that's what I got.
No, that was great. And I'm glad you're touching base on all of these because, for the listeners out there that are nurses or clinicians to doctors to therapists, me personally, I'm seeing more people trying to pulling in this work. I wouldn't say really in Georgia, but definitely like throughout the U.S. and I'm glad you touched base on, of course, like medicine walks too, because this is a very indigenous wisdom type work, and like a real medicine walk would actually be a couple of days. And so how we can pull them into, like you said, like 15 minutes to a day. This is also something we do with people before their quest. It's a full day. But whenever I see somebody who is like a therapist, or like this, me personally at our programs, like when like a therapist shows up, or like I think a nurse showed up one program, they once they turn like their brain off, I'm like, oh, this is how I would do it, or this is like, but realize like what their intention was, and then how they can pull it into their own practice. Sounds so complex for us as humans to like just hear about it and read about it, but it's just a simple, it's one of those things like if the intention is set correctly and you have the threshold, then of course you can really get a lot out of it. But it's all about the structure and then how you're setting this up in nature to embody that. And I think that's so important.
And it's innate in us. I think it's very, it comes, we have roots of the thousands of years of our ancestors doing this. So it does come to us easily, I think.
And I'm glad you mentioned intention. Like I've seen by personal experience, I've seen this happen before where there wasn't really much intention, and the person just went on one and a full day and didn't get anything out of it. Like they feel like those wasted because they didn't have like intention and they weren't really working on something that to mark that threshold. But before we kept kind of going down that, I did have a question that kind of came up in the beginning of that, and I was wondering if you could explain for the the therapists, the healers, the clinicians that are watching this, a little bit about like possibly how you pull those types of practices into the certification program. You don't mind like talking a little bit about like just one of the programs and how you use that. So if they're interested in the program, they could probably.
Yeah. So so my programs are set up in kind of in 3 levels, and the first one is an online class because I have people all around the world that learn, and it's gives you the foundational concepts and practices and how to get out and get this thing started. It's a really very popular program. It's just 2 months and 6 meetings, and then it's on a teachable website. And so how I pull those into my teaching is that each night we meet and we have a 90-minute class. We start with a practice. So we'll actually experience it each time, and people get to then, as the class goes on, get to lead one. So they get to, actually do it. And then, many of these practices and many more are described in the different webinars. It's a very practical class, so we get people out doing it. Part of your assignment, if you want to get the certificate and you want to pass the class, is you need to go out and find a favorite spot and get to know it. You need to take a friend or a significant other or a family person out and integrate the materials that we do. You need to, do a hypothetical workshop, or actually put it together workshop that you'd like to do. And so everything that we talk about and you read about and you hear about in the training webinars, you actually are going to do some of that. So that's the first level. And then I have a level 2 where we meet for 5 days in person, and we actually do all those practices together, and we share, and we lead the group. And so particularly it's called level 2 immersion training. It's 5 days of being mostly outside, although we do have a lodge for people who feel comfortable with that. And, we're practicing all these earth practices as a community, and people have so much transformative experiences. They also integrate all the learning. So lots and lots of body practices, somatic practices in the level 2. And then I have a certification, which is the 100-hour program, which is 2 more levels in addition to that, and more refined teaching about how to work with certain populations, how to practice with, how to deal with different people's issues like addictions and trauma and such, and then more integration and bringing it out to our communities. So that's a very quick rundown, but we also have support groups for people that keep practicing along the way. But I think that will go with the community question. Yeah?
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah.
So all this is online. You can go to my website and you'll see the information.
Awesome. Yeah, I love how you scaffold your programs.
Thank you.
Because there's so many programs out there, that can be a combination, and it's just kind of like they're all like immersive based, or and so the way you combine them and then builds into that integration piece, I think is just really cool. I love that. And just for the listeners, just pitching one of your programs, I was part of Ariana's online program, and got to use specific routines, but also practices and learnings with my work. And it's actually has become pretty helpful. And so I want to thank you for that. The online program was amazing. And a lot of people don't know that just an online program that for nature-based practitioners seems a little silly. It's actually really, it could be really helpful if you're dedicated and can do the work.
I want to add to that because, people say online ecotherapy or online nature connection. What are you talking about? How can you do that? But every single night, every single class, I'm sending you out to do these things. So you get to do them. And most people don't have people like you in their area, offering these things. And so I've had people, from India, Australia, Italy, all over Egypt, all over the world that, can't do the online, can't do the immersion yet because there's no one around. And so they get to start and get into their work and bring a lot of stuff in. So, yeah. Yeah.
And then your accountability and your attention with your exercises, readings, and stuff like that. That's what's really helpful for somebody that's in the program.
We want you to integrate it. We don't want you to just kind of like take it and run. And you need to be there in class so we can actually, talk about it.
Yeah. You were just actually hinting towards community. And that was kind of one of the questions. I think I had a couple questions about community. But one of the questions, because since we were talking a little bit about like anxiety, grief and loss, and like the population groups that ecotherapy can really work with. And one of the questions I had was, how do you help communities attend to the overwhelm, anxiety, and despair of what is happening, not just in the communities, but our planet as a whole? And then how do you help motivate actions to actually make changes to themselves and their communities?
Yeah, that's a great question. More and more people are, waking up to the fact that, we have a very serious climate change situation, and not just that, but, more problems in community, shootings, oil spills, just whatever it is, you name it, you all know what these things are. And so people are coming in and needing to talk about it, or they're anxious or depressed or in despair and all that. And so the main way that I work with this, with individuals and with groups, is to use the practices of Joanna Macy. You may have heard of her. She has been teaching and writing about the work that reconnects for over 40 years. And so if you work with individuals, what I'll kind of take you through what she calls the spiral of going from, the hard stuff into action. So, when an individual or group comes and is just feeling very stuck or overwhelmed with what's happening on the planet or in their community, we start with gratitude. Like, what are you thankful for? What, in the California fires, people, had their homes burned down, their neighbors' homes, their areas, but there was still trees and there was still flowers and there was still air and there was still, so how do we help people still feel there's some connection to beauty and things that they can appreciate? So that's kind of a beginning, and that's also a very sacred. Many people in spiritual communities start with gratitude, so it's a really essential thing to start with. And then the other really big thing is when people start sharing or hinting at their feelings about what's happening to the world. The biggest thing we need to do, and the biggest thing I do, is welcome that and say, yes, thank you. I want to hear more. That's normal. That's natural. It's so hard to feel these things. It's so much. So our mainstream culture does not honor it. It wants to distract us. It wants us to, buy more things instead of thinking and feeling and acting on these things. So a big part of the second stage is honoring our pain for the world. It's welcoming it and giving people ways to be able to talk about it so they don't feel like they're overwhelming somebody else, or they don't feel like they're strange. So I'll say a couple of the group ways to do this. First of all, I'm going to show you the book, Coming Back to Life, Joanna Macy. It's my favorite. It talks about all the concepts, and it has dozens and dozens of ways to help people. The favorite one that I do with groups, and you can do it in a very short amount of time, is called Open Sentences, and we've done these. And basically, you're inviting dyads of people to share their feelings, and I'll name one or two so you have a sense of them. And you talk for 2 minutes. So you'll have one person, say, what breaks my heart about what's happening to the natural world is, and then they'll start talking, and the other person's listening and hears them and for 2 minutes, and then says thank you, and then the first person answers back, what breaks my heart about what's happening to the natural world is, and then they talk. And it's kind of a nice structure because it's not too overwhelming. 2 minutes is not too hard. You're just with one other person, and you can kind of begin to name some of these things and hear some of these things that people just don't usually talk about. So that's kind of like a first level. And then there's other questions that go with them, how I feel about what's happening socially, what I feel like is going to happen with my children in the future. That's a really, really hard one. So anyway, so that's open sentences. That's one big way I work with people. Even if I only have an hour with people, that is something you can do individually or with a group. I'll give you another one of my favorites. It's called milling, or the milling. You have to have like at least 6 or 8 people, but you can have up to 40 or 50. And people move around the room and then stop in front of people several different times. And each time they are connecting with the person they're in front of, and we talk about, this is a person that has a precious life. This is a person who is affected by what's happening in the world, but they're still coming here. They want to do something about this. We look at this as a person with strengths that can help change the world. We look at this as a person who's had a lot of pain and's been affected. So there's each little encounters with each of those themes, and people feel super moved by it because it's one person they're looking at, and they also feel hope because it's like, oh, okay, I'm not alone. I know there's other people that are actually thinking and feeling about these things. So I don't know if you've ever done that one, but if you ever have a chance, it's it's really powerful. I've done it many times.
Yeah. The milling was actually the first time I was ever exposed to Joanna Macy. I was doing a training. Oh gosh, it must have been like eight years ago, and and I didn't know it was a Joanna Macy thing until afterwards. And it was it was really powerful. And yeah, and you mentioned hope, and like, which is so much of what what our world needs now, and what everybody needs, and like not just hope in our world and each other, but ourselves, and like the self trust. And I think what the million and open sentences also creates like this. It's like a deeper way of just really listening to people, and in a way that you're listening to the whole of a person, and not thinking about like, oh, this is what I'm going to say next. So like just to have that full attention, and to listen without judgment and criticism. That's what those do so well with, which is not just for ecotherapy clients, for everybody.
Everybody, yeah.
I mean, even you mentioned being a parent, like even as a dad, like just to be like making sure that I'm present is so important. And as a husband, it's so important too. And it's just kind of funny. I was actually just having a conversation with a good friend of mine about this. Like he was having this same struggle. How can I be present with my daughter at 3:00 in the morning when she's not going to bed? And I was like relating to that because that's where ours is at right now.
Yeah, that's a tough time.
I have to be present right now. And like, so like this constantly asking myself that question can be really actually pretty helpful. Like last night, she was up from 4 to 6. Like it was, but it was just like, instead of just taking the anger internally, of course not on her, but I was like, all right, well, I'm exhausted, but I'm here. This was coming on.
He's healthy, and so I want to say the next two stages, because there's two more stages that kind of help you and bring you to hope. So after you've honored the pain and heard the pain and given people room to speak about it, the next part is acknowledging that why you're feeling all these things is because you care. You know, you care about the planet, you care about the plastics in the ocean, you care about, people getting hurt, you care, you want and care about animals. And so when you kind of shift to realize, oh, wow, all of this that is going into my pain for the world is because I am connected and I care so much, then it begins to transform and feel bigger than yourself, feel like a sacred holding than just your own personal ego holding. So it's a really important stage. And there's a beautiful exercise that I like to do, the Council of All Beings. It's a Joanna Macy exercise, and you get to speak for an animal or an element or the land or a tree, and everyone speaks for that around the circle, and you get to hear the voices of something beyond yourself. So it's showing and feeling how you are much more than just your human self. So that is part of that third stage. And the fourth stage, the action, that's where, when you feel in connection and empowered with your connection with the world and your love for the world, then, you're more apt to want to do something, to clean up the river, to recycle more, to eat less, with less impact on the planet, to buy less plastic, whatever, so the fourth stage is going forth and taking action. And we always ask people, what's your next step? What might get in the way of that? How can you change that? What resources you can bring to have to actually follow through? Because we have a lot of ideas sometimes, but what's going to make it happen? And so anyway, so those, and there's different practices around that. But once people start, at the beginning of the spiral, go through it all, get to the end, they're feeling more empowered and more ready to do something. And one of the big parts that helps them feel empowered is that they're not alone, and that they don't have to hold this alone, that there's others there with them. They don't have to hold their feelings alone. And that sharing the feelings is actually going to make you feel more energy going forward, as opposed to holding them in. That's a misconception most people have. So yes, so there you go.
Yeah. I love how it's like it's starting in this internal process and this dialogue, and then it opens up. And I think it's kind of like it's almost similar to like to me it reminds me of a rites of passage work, where you're in this internal
Mm.
stage, a severance stage of just transitioning from thing to thing to thing. And then when you catch it and you hold on to these emotions and this dialogue, it has to be released, but it has to be released in a certain way that it's witnessed. And so that Council of Beings is so powerful with. I just love her work, but also like how you're pulling that in to your practice is actually really unique for the community.
Mm-hmm. You know, I want to point people to, if you go to my website, and I'll be talking more about that later. I wrote a whole article about how to integrate it with individuals, how to integrate Joanna Macy's work with individuals and with groups. So I interviewed 10 ecotherapists around the country, and I kind of culled different things of how they do it. So if you're interested in this work and you want to get more ideas, definitely get her book, Coming Back to Life, but also check out that article because it shows how in healing practices you can bring it in. So, yeah.
Oh, perfect. Awesome. Yeah. And we can pitch that at the end of our call again, too, if listeners are looking that up. Well, we still got a couple more minutes, and I just had like one more question, and then we can close out the call here. And it was kind of actually, you kind of led right into it. We've talked a lot about like the somatic, and I love how we pulled in the Joanna Macy's work. And of course, there's so many other ways, like to, I guess, with combinations and stuff. But in your approach, and at Earth Body Institute as well, other than like the programs, like what are some ways people can learn more about somatic ecotherapy and cultivate their personal and professional skills?
Yeah. So one of the books that I love the most is written by Andrea Olson, and it's called Body and Earth. And she combines biology, ecology, environmental science, movement, creative arts. She's really a very holistic person, and there's 31 days of exercises, and you can, cut and paste which ones fit you and your groups, but there's like, it'll give you different ways to relate to the air in the embodied way, different ways to relate to waters, different ways to relate to the soil and the earth. And it's a really nice put together book. So that's the one that I recommend, that has the most kind of body earth healing connection. And then there's not a lot written directly about it. So that's the only main one I have to say. And then clearly, I have a couple other articles that are on my website that you can peek at that talk about it a little bit. So yeah, sorry, that's all I got.
Yeah, perfect. And your newsletter, your newsletter is actually really informative too. And sometimes you can find some or most of the time your newsletter has resources in it that I've read. And of course, like if you want to go really deep, there's Theodore Rozak's work, which is if you want to go into the very depth psychology side of eco-psychology.
I can give you other book ideas. I was thinking you were saying just the somatic, but
the somatic, yeah, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
Like, but there's hints of that, but this is somatic. I think that's what you gave was actually a good example.
Yeah, but if people want another book that's kind of a primer of ecotherapy, you want to read it more, it's just called Ecotherapy: Healing with Nature in Mind by Buzel and Chalquist. It's published in 2009, and it actually was what catalyzed me into this last 10 years of my work, because it shows all the different ways people are doing ecotherapy, and it's inspiring short chapters. It's easy to read. And so Ecotherapy: Healing with Nature in Mind is a great one. I'm looking at my books over here. There's so many books out there. So you just, depends on which line of work. Richard Louv, The Nature Principle, also talks about so many different professions and how they use nature connection, nature related work. So if you're from a profession that has nothing to do with things we've been talking about so far, check that out. The Nature Principle, that has a lot of ideas, and it's inspiring. So
cool.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
And yeah, for the listeners, if you're still curious, you can always email Ariana your questions, and I can catalyze those. Some of these will be on the webpage too, and of course, like all of us can read and read and read, but the somatic
Mhm.
is very hard to obtain unless you're, of course, doing a training or a workshop with
Mhm.
a practitioner. So I always want to point that one out. I wish we could just read books and all of a sudden be a professional. That would be so great.
Absorb.
But it just doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like
You have
that.
to practice. You have to
You just
in the
have to
body.
practice and be out there. That's what's so powerful about the somatic approach.
Mhm.
Is there anything that I've not touched base on that you still want to touch base on before we close out?
Um, yeah, I guess, I mean, kind of like, an ending for the theme before we tell about more stuff, um, is just that, we all live in our bodies or feeling them all the time. Some of us have, different issues. It's scary to feel some of our bodies, so we need to get support with that. But I encourage each of you listening and watching to just try out some of these things we talked about, especially the sensory things. They're so easy. Just pick one at a time and spend 5 minutes just listening, or and also to yeah, to just, get outside more and open yourself to what's there that your impulses lead you to. And it may surprise you. Your head may say one thing and your body may go, oh, but I really like this little piece of this little mushroom here, you know. So yeah, it'll help you, bring you more energy, aliveness. It's just such a beautiful way to be in the world, to be more in our bodies and in connection with nature, because nature has so much to offer us and, and give us and relate to us with, not just giving us stuff. So I guess that's all. I know we're running out of time. So yeah.
You're actually right on time. So that was
Oh,
good
okay.
closing. Um, yeah, I just want to say what you're doing, Ariana, is really special. But in the way that you're building community behind not just the principles of your work, but and the therapy itself, but with Joanna Macy's work and all of like this wisdom in a specific way. It's just really unique and powerful, and we need more clones of you out there.
I'm trying.
um, and before we close out, though, that I want you to have a chance to pitch
Mm.
your free gift to our listeners who are curious about what that is. Would you want to explain that
Yeah,
a little bit?
sure. Yeah. So I I know we have people from all different realms here. And so my free gift on my website at the bottom where you sign up for the newsletter is 12 steps of creating a successful outdoor workshop. Because I know a lot of people that are not therapists, they do workshops and groups and retreats and stuff. And so in that, it takes you from all the different, very, very practical pieces through how do you actually help a group come together? How do you help a group feel safe? How do you help them connect to the natural world? How do you help them go deeper? And it just lines it all up. And my students have really enjoyed it because a lot of these things, oh, I didn't realize that I need another person outdoors, because if someone wanders away, then if I wander away to find them, then the group is just left there. There's just certain little things that are easy. And I'm also giving you a teaching webinar that has myself and one of my co-leaders, Kai Siedenberg, on it. And it kind of takes you through the experience. It's a little more experiential than looking at a piece of paper. So you'll get both of those. And if you don't lead groups outdoors and have some interest in something else that I've talked about, you can email me or email the Earth Body Institute, and we will get back to you. I often give one-off webinars to people if there's a certain topic, like working with children and teens, or working in with animal-assisted therapy, or working with people inside, because a lot of people work inside. So I have a lot of different webinars. If you talk to me and you say, I'm doing this and I really want to know more about such and such, I will shoot you a free teaching webinar. So that's that. And then, we have lots of programs. I alluded to some earlier. And the biggest one, if you're like newish to this and really want to have a full thing, is a certification. It's 100 hours, 2 different 5-day trainings and 2 different online classes. And it just, you come out of it like, wow, I really have a lot of knowledge here. So, and then there's also just little small groups, like ongoing support groups that meet for just 90 minutes once a month to kind of kind of keep yourself involved and supported along the way. So anyway, that's enough. You can go to my website, the Earth Body Institute, and you'll see whatever you need to know. It's a lot of information.
Yeah, yeah, but a lot of good information, and what you're doing is, well, I was just saying earlier, it's beyond words. It's so wonderful, and I keep pitching your program, but it really is that good. And so hopefully people will be banging at your door soon after watching this video. For the free gift, that will be underneath Ariana's picture, underneath her bio. So when you're watching this, you can be on the website looking at that. And then the link to the free gift, I will be putting in there as well. But Ariana, we're at the top of the hour here. And I just want to thank you so much, and for just actually honestly touching base on something that's is so much bigger. I think you and I probably need like 2 hours to get through it. It's so much.
But we got to start.
But it's so much just juicy, great work, and I'm just really glad we got to talk today and talk about your process and your work. So thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome. It's been a true pleasure. I really enjoyed talking to you and about this. So I hope to see you and anyone else who is drawn to this again. And
if you have like a minute or like 20 seconds, if you want to close us out, you're more than welcome to do that.
Okay. Yeah. So just, again, just kind of soften your eyes and just acknowledge in your body that you are connected to the air that we started with, and also the ground every moment, and the sky around you, and to all the humans and creatures, and just to know that there's a lot of potential that you can continue to feel if you just take a few moments and slow down and tune into that. So I hope you do that for yourself, and it will pass on to your people, and I hope to be supporting you in that at some point too.
Thank you. Thank you for the grounding. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.